It's a really dicey subject. It's something that, like, I'm not super comfortable getting into the weeds just yet without do I okay, so let me tell you guys what I was planning to do and then what I opted out of doing last night just because I was super tired because I traveled all day. Maybe I'll do this Friday. If you guys want me to, I can. So, a couple of things about me that maybe you guys don't know. It's funny because a lot of people are trying to do legal analysis or like understand what's happening in the case, but they always preface it with, "Hey, I'm not an attorney. I'm not an attorney. I'm just doing my best, whatever." I actually am an attorney. So, for those of you guys who don't know, I graduated from law school back in 2009. And I practiced law for 4 years as a patent attorney, and then I left law to start my own business. So I'm like an education entrepreneur, you could say, but I did go to law school. I did take the bar. I did practice for 4 years. Now, I am not a criminal, was never a criminal attorney. Again, I was a patent attorney, which deals with like technology. It's a very nuanced type of law, but I do have some baseline, reasonable understanding of case law still to this day. And I probably would be able to dive into the materials and give a pretty decent analysis based on my understanding of what I've read. But anyways, my point is I haven't done the thorough analysis yet. I haven't gone through the case history and looked at all the facts on file and really given my thorough opinion. I can do that. I will still preface it, and we can talk about it today. I still will preface it that while I am an attorney, don't take this as an actual bona fide legal opinion, because again, this is out of my area of expertise, and I haven't practiced law officially in any like official capacity in like a really long time, in over 10 years. So, anyways, just throwing that out there. But Justin, let's talk. You mentioned something previously before we got on the air, and you can mention names. You don't have to mention names. You can say like, hey, what kind of people are discussing around the gym and whatnot, because this is a big issue in the world of mixed martial arts and the UFC in particular. But yeah, what have you been hearing?
I
And so,
tell you what, man, jump on Twitter right now. A lot of guys are coming out posting the video that we watched of that girl crying, saying she's faking. A lot of guys that really respect their opinion. Again, I'm not going to name any names, but guys, jump on Twitter right now. You can see all these guys, all these, high level, high guys in the UFC, man. Really, again, credited people saying that they think it's fake, saying that they're taking, Conor McGregor's going through a hard time right now, and they're trying to almost feed on his negative energy, saying like, hey, look, he has so many things going wrong, or he's making so many mistakes right now. This is just one thing we can add into the fire that people will think is legit because of how he's spiraling right now, and they're trying to take advantage of a situation that isn't necessarily true, just because of again how hard he's spiraling right now in spiraling. I can't even talk in his life right now, that people automatically are going to assume anything negative, related to Connor is going to be true.
it is so. I was on MMA Joey's channel a few days ago, and I was asking him his thoughts on this whole thing because it has been driving me crazy. Like, I do not like cases like this where there's so much doubt, meaning there's so many inconsistencies in the story. There's so many ways that it could have happened. There's two different sides to the story. There's no real concrete actual evidence, right? It's primarily circumstantial, and it just gives me a lot of anxiety. I don't like it. Now, there's people that have very, very strong opinions on both sides of the fence. I don't particularly, because I'm still trying to do my exploration. In fact, I don't think I'll ever have a strong opinion one way or the other. I don't think it's possible to get a really, really strong opinion because there's too many unknowns. Unless you really know Connor or you really know Nikita Han, then I suppose from that perspective, you would have a much better feel or much better idea, because I think this really comes down in a lot of ways to just the individual credibility of each person. But I'll tell you this, okay? So there's particular people on YouTube that are really strong supporters of Connor, like Jesse on Fire, who's our boy, right? We love Jesse. He's a really good dude. I know he may be controversial. Some people might consider him controversial. He's a little bit outspoken, this and that. But I'll tell you this: we know Jesse, and he's a good guy. He's trying to do the right thing, and he's trying to do his best to give a fair and balanced review of this entire case. So you have another guy, RP MMA, I think is his channel. He is on the side of Connor. He's been covering this case from the very beginning. He's also very interesting because he's based in Ireland. So he's been following along from the get-go. He's been giving details of this because remember, You mentioned that this case is happening when Conor is really in a vulnerable spot. A lot of things are happening. He's spiraling out of control. But don't forget, this case began back in 2018. It's 6 years old. So it began a long time ago. I mean, things were still a little bit crazy in Conor's life back then, but not like how they are now. So just letting you know that, that's the beginnings of it. But he's been pretty consistently saying from the beginning, covering everything step by step, that he thinks her story is suspect. So again, I don't know myself, but there are inconsistencies and there are issues that are problematic. One of the things is that, okay, again, I need to do a deep dive into the facts. So I truly apologize in advance if I'm getting any little minuscule detail wrong, because I don't want to get any. It's very important not to get any details wrong in a case or any case really. But I'm just going to talk as generally as possible and as accurately as possible. The main thing is, like, when there's the CCTV footage, that's a problem, right? Potentially, because we see her after the incident took place, kind of cuddling up with Conor and cuddling up with the other guy, kissing them on the arm. Behavior that seems perplexing. Now, I have heard from a legal expert on the other side that was interviewed by Pete Carroll. Like, I've been listening to a lot of this stuff over the weekend, that said, and this makes a lot of sense to me too. So I just want to put this out as food for thought. The reaction that we sometimes imagine would be the sensible reaction in a high stress situation like this is not the reaction that we get. Let me give you an example. When I was in law school, one of the things that I worked on in my third year of law school at the Center on Wrongful Convictions is something called false confessions. Are you familiar with false confessions?
No, I'm not. And by the
Okay,
way, before we go any further, I have no opinion on it. I'm not saying he did it or didn't do it.
for sure.
So just if it sounds like I was biased,
No, no.
uh, okay, no, just when I said, like, people are saying, like, I don't have an opinion about it.
Yeah.
So I just want the viewers to know that, like, I'm not saying he did it. I'm not saying he didn't do it. I don't know enough about the topic or the legalities of what's happening to have an opinion on it. So I just want to make that clear.
100%. And I'm not by the way, also, I just want to let people know, it's not that I'm afraid to give an opinion because I'm afraid one way or the other. I just want to give an opinion that is very, very carefully thought out. The problem with giving opinion too early on is, like, it's just not really fair. It's not really fair to Conor or to Nikita. And that would be incorrect. But I'm happy to give an opinion once I've done a thorough deep dive, which I have not done yet. But anyway, so let me tell you about, like, when we think about false confessions, you think, like, what is a false confession? A false confession is confessing to a crime that you did not commit. So you think that's insane. Anybody that would watch, if you remember Making a Murderer, right? That was a pretty popular series on Netflix. I worked on that case in law school. Totally, I did no idea. I didn't even know they were making a documentary about it. When I saw the documentary, I'm like, oh my god, this is the case that I worked on for a year. We worked on the Brendan Dassey side of that case. But anyways, Brendan Dassey was a young kid who went in and got interrogated by police about a homicide of a woman, and they basically kept him there for hours upon hours, and he eventually confessed to the entire thing. Any normal person looks at that and says, well, obviously he confessed. We have it on tape of him saying, yes, I did it. Yes, I did it, blah, blah, blah. So of course he's guilty. No questions asked. Case closed, done. In fact, we were almost absolutely positive that he was innocent if you really looked at the case, at the history of the case, and if you look at Brendan Dassey, and if you look at what he went through, and he was a kid, he was 15, and he was under this intense interrogation, and you can actually, people break in interrogation, especially if you don't know what's going on, and you don't have legal representation, which he didn't, and he eventually confessed to this whole thing. Sadly, he's still in. It's horrible. It's a horrible story. He's still in prison. He almost got out on appeal, but then it was overturned at the last level of appeal by the Illinois Supreme Court. Super sad. He's going to be in prison until he's like 44. But anyways, so my point is that sometimes things aren't always as they appear. So when you're in a high stress situation, sometimes you just do things just to survive. And this is the point that this gentleman made, is that when she was kind of like cuddling up to them after the incident, that may seem bizarre, perplexing, and nonsensical. It's like, dude, she's probably lying, because if she just went through this traumatic experience, why is she doing that? But again, sometimes people they don't act the way that you would imagine, like we see in movies, like them running and screaming down the hall, like, call the police, like, oh no, like she might have been in survival mode. So just take that with a grain of salt, that behavior. But I think that's a big point of contention, is the CCTV footage conflicting with what we would imagine her reaction would be under that high stress situation. But that's one of the issues that people have brought up. Another issue is that none of her friends testified on her behalf. She had friends in the hotel room. None of them heard anything. None of them said anything. Now, to give a counter argument to that, maybe there was witness intimidation. And the only reason why I bring that up is because there has been like clear cases of, we can't link it back to Conor, but likely cases of witness intimidation that occurred in this case, where the masked men went into her house with balaclavas with masks on and stabbed her partner at the time. He eventually left her after that, but he was attacked. They had to move. They had to relocate. She was also asking for relocation money in the case. And then there
Bro,
was another.
like,
Yeah, go ahead.
imagine that. Like, you find out your girlfriend cheated on you, and then guys come to your house and stab you. Like, I think it's time to get out of that situation. That's fucking
Well,
wild, dude.
well,
Like,
yeah, like, and I mean, he did break up with her, and again, it doesn't necessarily, for sure, it doesn't necessarily mean he thought she was lying or she was lying, right? Like, that also can be a high stress situation that I think people don't understand, like, because I've dealt with this to a small amount, but like when you feel like you're constantly being watched, I mean, this is a whole nother level than what I've dealt with, by the way. But like when you feel like there's potentially an organized crime outfit that's out to get you, they're watching you, they're monitoring you. They came in, they nearly killed you, they stabbed you. Yo, even if you believe your girl and like whatever, it's just be like, yo, I feel like you created this situation somehow by, maybe he blamed her, who knows, maybe he believed her, but he still blamed her. He's like, I'm out, I can't deal with this, I can't die, I want to live. That's it. So it could be as simple as that. But anyways, there was another woman who was pushed off the boat, and she was trying to file legal action against Conor McGregor, and her car was like bombed. It's crazy, right? So there could be these cases of witness intimidation that are occurring, that is like causing maybe her friends not to come up, I lost my train of thought. Now I just remembered that caused her friend not to step up, not to testify. Maybe they were afraid that they would be harmed or injured, or maybe there was explicit threats, right? So there are potential explanations. That's why this case is so confusing, because you would think, why are her friends not stepping up? Maybe they were intimidated. I don't know, right? And then we also have sort of like the bizarre things of her amnesia and her lack of memory. I can see that, though, under a high stress situation, she could have forgotten things, but that's also another potential like weird issue where she didn't remember the CCTV footage. Like when they were showing it to her, she didn't remember. I think they didn't even say that his friend had sex with her, and then she brought that up, and then she tried to file something against him. He came out innocent. They not civilly liable. Let's put it like that. The last thing I'll say is a nuance that I had missed earlier on. I thought that this was I thought he was found civilly liable for rape or sexual assault, at least. That is incorrect. He was found civilly liable, not for even sexual assault. I'm going to double check this right now because I don't want to get this wrong. I believe he was found civilly liable for assault. Okay. So hold on. Let me double check this. Conor McGregor, civilly liable. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Civil find. Oh no, it does say in the headline sexual assault. I don't know. I heard other people saying no, it's not sexual assault, it's assault. No, I think it is sexual assault. Because I just looked it up and that came up on every headline. But anyways, so again, the other issues, and just to clarify, because the same thing in courts in Ireland as it is here, the evidentiary standards are lower for a civil case when you're trying to get monetary damages. So it's just a preponderance of the evidence, meaning, which is still a big deal, right? Meaning it's more likely than not that this happened. So that's what the jury said. And again, the jury heard, we also want to give credit to the jury. I know that there's a lot of bias against Conor McGregor in Ireland. Could that have fed into this? I don't know. Again, that's another weird thing, right? Did people have an inherent bias against Conor McGregor? Did the fact that there was 7 women and 5 men on the jury give them, contribute to the bias? I don't know, right? It's a small difference. But again, if you've ever been on a case or been on a jury before, there's a discussion. You're all discussing the evidence, discussing the facts. So it's not like the women just run the show, and who's to say even that the women had the bias? Maybe the men had the bias, right? We're making a lot of assumptions here. But these are all questions that we're wondering, hey, he is pretty hated in Ireland. Did that contribute to this? Whatever it may be. Hold on, we got a couple of comments here. Let's read this. So, why is sexual Western Mass Climber? Assault. Why is sexual assault a civil case? Oh, okay. So Western Mass Climber asks, like, hey, why is this a civil case? Well, typically it is a criminal act, right? Sexual assault is a criminal act, but it's the same thing in the U.S. If you remember the O.J. Simpson civil trial that happened, right? Murder is obviously a criminal matter, but the family lost the criminal case, and so they brought a civil case and they won that to just have some justice and to get monetary damages, etc. So because it's a lower evidentiary standard, so it's easier to win a civil case than it is a criminal case. In this particular instance, Nikita Hand tried to file criminal charges. She went and tried to file criminal charges, and they said they didn't have enough evidence. They didn't feel like the case would be strong enough. So a lot of times that decision is up to both the police and the district attorney. I think they call it a solicitor in Ireland, but up to the district attorney. And if they feel that they don't have enough evidence to bring the case, the charges aren't going to stick. They'll oftentimes not pursue those charges. And I think that's what happened here, which kind of makes sense because it's all circumstantial. There really isn't a ton of evidence. I mean, it's really, do you believe her over him? Now you mentioned something about that interview of Nikita Hand where she's crying, and you said that you felt like people thought that there she was being inauthentic or perhaps maybe putting out.
That's just what I've read. It's not
That's
that
what
I
you read.
feel. I don't feel that way,
No,
but
no, for sure.
I had, yeah, two or three people came out on Twitter this morning, and they say, "Look at this. Like this doesn't add up. This looks almost staged."
Really?
Or yeah, and again, I can find those screenshots and send them to you of the people that is staging that are saying this. Being in a high stress situation, man. 6 years later, I don't know, man. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm not sympathetic, but when you've had 6 years to digest this and you're still crying, I mean, I couldn't imagine. I don't know, man. I guess, I don't know. When I'm put in a high stress situation, I could be really emotional right away, but 6 years later, I mean, I think I've thought about it so many times. I've replayed it so many times that, and again, I'm not saying it's not authentic, but me in a personal sense, 6 years later, I still wouldn't be emotional about it, I guess, per se, because I've already talked about it. I went over it time and time again, 1,000 times, and then to come out and be that emotional 6 years later, again, not saying it's inauthentic by any means, but I know that personally, I would be handling it much differently.
That's fair. Okay, let me give a counter argument to that because okay, so I can actually understand. I think I can understand to some extent because I can totally see her getting emotional at this point because for 6 years, imagine this. She's gone through it. She's dealt with so much. She's had to move. She lost her fiance, her boyfriend. Then she got, she is now, I think, dating somebody else. But she had to go through this traumatic event. She probably has had tons of threats. And the biggest thing is she's had people not believe her. I think she's constantly faced while she's had supporters, probably had a lot of people that have not believed her. And I can kind of understand what that feels like with stuff that I've gone through in my life legally, specifically, what I'm talking about. But basically, to finally get justice, to finally get vindication, right? When the situation that I was dealing with finally went down and there was an arrest made, the first time I broke down in tears, even though it had been going on, the situation for over a year, I broke down crying because it's like, oh my God, finally somebody's listening to me. Finally, somebody's taking this seriously. I imagine that's only a fraction of what she felt. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I will say this, when I actually watched that footage of her crying and talking, that rang true to me. And that's just on a internal level. I do feel like I have a pretty good sense of people in terms of when they're being honest or dishonest. But I think a lot of us do, and I think a lot of us think we do, and I think a lot of us actually do. I think we can generally have a pretty good sense of when people are lying, unless they're like pure psychopaths and like amazing liars. Maybe then it's a little bit hard to tell. But that felt authentic to me, at least that instant. But anyways, if this is interesting to you guys, you know what? Not even forget about that. I need to do a deep dive. I should throw my hat in the ring and do a deep dive because, like me, compared to like Ariel Hawani or Pete Carroll or these other guys, like the difference is I do have a legal background. Again, not in criminal law, but I think that would make sense. I'm happy to do it. I'll take the time this week as I have some downtime, and I'll really get into the weeds. But yeah, it is a hot topic. I'll say this too, man. If this didn't go down the way that she said, it's just so. In either case, it's just so sad. Like, Connor has a lot of problems, and we know that, and he very well may be kind of a bad guy, in terms of like everything he does. Just even if you think about it in terms of the infidelity, obviously there's a massive, massive difference in terms of being, especially too, we don't know the agreement that he has with D, by the way. This may not be just like cheating out of the blue and him being dishonest. They may have an arrangement where it's like, look, like I think that this can be commonplace with a lot of superstar athletes where it's just like, look, I can't be married because I have like 20 women coming at me every day. Like, I can't fight that temptation. It's just I don't have it in me, but I want to be with you. I want to have a family with you. I'm going to take care of you for the rest of your life. Like, we've seen this with other athletes and other superstars, people in high positions of power. They're like, all right, I'm happy with this. I get that you get so much attention, but as long as I'm number one, I'll take it, right? Or we have open relationships, open marriages. So we don't even know if the infidelity thing is a major issue in their relationship or not. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm sure to be put on public spotlight, it's not pleasant for D. Devlin, but behind closed doors, it may not even be an issue. But anyways, if this truly did not happen, man, like, is there anything worse than being called? And let's not say the R word because YouTube doesn't like it, but is there anything worse than having this label? I don't think there is. Maybe there's one label worse, which we both know of, which I don't want to mention either. But like, it's pretty much the second worst thing you could be called on this planet in this, in our society today. So if it is not happening,
I mean,
it's horrible tragedy. Yeah, go ahead.
Child
Yeah,
predators.
yeah. But
Okay,
let's not even say it.
sure,
Yeah,
sure, sure.
but that's
Yeah,
the
I
one
was just
worst.
curious what you were thinking,
That's
but
the one. Yeah.
this is a touchy subject for me, man. And when I was in college, my best friend had this kind of allegation on him, and like unreal, like the same thing, girl at the police station crying, saying, this happened and this happened. When I was with him the night before, that shit didn't happen. And he had to go and be and give a statement to the police. And the only reason he got off was because the second time the girl went in there to tell her story, it was different from the first time. Besides that, people were calling him this. He was going to court. He was facing, prison time for this. And so when it comes, and like I said, just like in this situation, the girl was crying and, oh my God, this is what happened. And he was just like, holy shit. Like I remember it like it was yesterday because I talked to him on the phone so much about it. And fortunately, there was another girl in the situation that testified on his behalf, said that it was false. And then the second time the girl went and told her story, it wasn't the same as the first. So unfortunately, given the situation, he was getting off. So in these circumstances, man, I'm usually very partial to, like, hey man, let's not call anybody anything until the facts come out, because I mean, it's man, like I'll never forget. This is 15 years ago, and I remember the emotional trauma my buddy went through and
Yeah.
how emotional he was. I mean, he thought his life was over. He thought he was going to lose his college scholarship. He was a Division I athlete. Thought he was going to lose his scholarship, and he almost did. He almost went to prison. And fortunately, it didn't work out that way. But man, I just remember like this chick and how much she was lying, and like it just blows my mind. So when I hear things like this, man, it brings all those emotions back up that I wasn't even involved in the situation, but to see him to go through what he had to go through was traumatic.
God, yeah. And apparently, this is again secondhand information that I've heard from RP MMA, Jesse on Fire, etc. Is that I think apparently there are inconsistencies in her story. Like, her story did change, which can be the main thing is this, right? When you're again, I haven't done a deep dive yet, so people don't get mad at me here because I'm just telling you in a general standpoint. When you're fabricating a story, where you're coming up with a story, I am a massive fan of like true crime documentary. I don't watch much true crime anymore. Actually, I stopped because I felt like it was too much negative energy. Like seeing all these murder cases is just depressing after a while. But it's like when you fabricate a story and you go in and you go into an interrogation, the police will have you stay there for like 6, 8, 10 hours. Why? Because they'll ask the same questions over and over. Okay, wait, tell us again. So wait, how did this happen that night? They do this intentionally. And a lot of times the people will be like, wait, didn't you already ask me that? Yeah, but just tell us one more time. Because when you fabricate a story, you have to remember all the details and things that you added in. And it's very difficult to keep everything straight unless you have it perfectly down. So you're going to make little changes. And that's what they're looking for. Versus the truth is easy. The truth is simple. You could probably tell a truthful story, something that really happened 10 times in a row with no variations. So the inconsistencies are very important. Again, I'll do a deep dive this week, and let me really get into the weeds, and let me give you my true honest opinion, and we'll take it from there. But like I said, we want to hope that the right decision was made. The thing that leans me in favor of the right decision being made is that this was a long trial. This was a long, like, if you've never sat jury duty before, you go into the weeds. You hear both sides, left, right. The prosecution, the defense. Well, not prosecution here because it's a civil case, but you know what I'm saying. The plaintiff, the defense. You're going to hear cross examinations. They're really going to hammer the witnesses. I don't know for sure if Nikita Hand went on the stand, but I assume she did. I heard that Conor went on the stand. Again, all that stuff was private, so reporters weren't allowed in. But they're really getting a deep dive into all the facts. And so if they did feel that way strongly, that gives me a vote of confidence. Again, the thing weighing against that is, was there inherent biases because he's so hated in Ireland? I don't know. But again, that's where it is, and that's where we'll leave it. But you're saying, Justin, in general, from what you're seeing in Twitter, on Twitter with a lot of fighters, you're feeling like some support for Conor is
Yeah,
what you're.
I wouldn't say it's more or less. I'd say it's still 50-50. When it came out, I didn't see any support for Conor. I saw everyone calling him a piece of shit and this and that, and what we don't want to talk about. But then this morning, when I was waiting to get on the show, like, so a lot of times, with 30 minutes before our show gets on, I'll jump on Twitter and see what everyone's talking about, because a lot of times we're talking about the hottest topics. So a lot of
Yes.
times I can see opinions from other people, whether it's fighters, whether it's controversy like this, or what it is. I get on to try and get perspective, and I saw 3, 4, 5, maybe even a half dozen of not just fighters, but people involved in the fight world that are involved in the UFC. Like I said, not even just fighters. Coming out to support Conor McGregor. And you guys get on Twitter, you'll be able to see this. A lot of people are resharing that video, calling her a liar, saying it's fake, saying it's staged, saying it's rehearsed.
Hmm.
And again, I want to reiterate also is I don't have an opinion about it. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just repeating what other people are saying.
Yeah, for sure. Apparently, also one other fact is that when she came home that night, her boyfriend recorded her conversation, or like recounting of all the incidents and everything like that. Which is kind of weird that
That's
he
really
recorded.
weird, man.
Yeah,
Really
it's
weird.
really
Yeah.
weird. I don't know. Somebody was saying that they think maybe I don't know. Now we're getting into theoretical stuff, so I don't want to comment too much. But she did have a lot of bruising, and she had a lot of damage done to her, especially just a lot of like details I won't necessarily go into. But she did have a lot of damage to her, so something happened. Was it Conor? Was it something after Conor that happened? And then I don't know, right? So these are the questions, and these are the God, it's very tricky and very dicey. Another thing I'd be curious to know is if any of those, but maybe you couldn't see it yet, or maybe the bruising hadn't kind of like come out, I guess, at this point. But I would be curious to know what you could see from the CCTV. I imagine you couldn't see any of that because that I had never heard that mentioned. Anyways, well, that's where it's at. This is a topic that obviously you can tell both of us are a little uncomfortable to talk about because it's a tricky topic. It's a very, it could be a very divisive issue. And again, it's we need more information. So I'm gonna try and do that. I'm gonna get more information, do my due diligence. We can talk about it more intelligibly, perhaps Friday or next week.